This is the BMW R1300RT, and I think it's fair to say it's one of the best, if not the best, touring motorcycle that I've ever ridden. I've really enjoyed the past couple of weeks riding it. I've got plenty of miles in, but then again, you know, no bike is absolutely perfect. And so in this video, we'll go through the 12 key things that I've enjoyed about it, and then 5 areas that still could be improved a little bit. But before we get started, a massive thanks to Kalimoto for supporting the channel and sponsoring this video. Kalimoto is a dedicated motorcycle-specific navigation app that uses their own in-house built algorithm to avoid boring straight roads and find the good twisty ones. So you can still use the fast mode to get as quickly as possible from A to B, but also you've got winding and twisty that basically look to take in the best possible curvy routes so you can have a proper good time out on the bike. We love using it when we're in unfamiliar places to find good roads to go and film on, but also it's great for back home when you want to mix up your regular routes and try and keep things a little bit fresh. So yeah, if you want to find out more, there's a link down in the description below, and also a couple of codes, one for a free trial of all their premium features and another for a discount if you do decide to take out a membership. So once again, a massive thanks to Kalimoto for their support. And with that, let's talk about my favorite things about this beautiful RT. Tim's on the cameras today, and I'll say for this first one, mate, you might want to brace yourself. For number one of my favorite things about this bike is the horn. It's like a truck. So yeah, it'll definitely get you seen out on the road if the sort of visual presence of the bike isn't enough. But on to number two, and that's the levels of comfort and wind protection that you get on this particular bike. This windscreen looks pretty big already in the down position, but it's electronically adjustable. And when you put it all the way up, for someone of my height at 5'9" or 175 centimeters, it really is comprehensive in terms of its coverage. There's a little bit of wind, maybe just above the top of your head there, but otherwise it's like a proper cocoon. Also, the wing mirrors do a fantastic job of pushing all the wind up and over your hands and around your shoulders. And so even when I've done a fairly wet ride, like, you know, one of those stints on the motorway with lots of spray and rain, really unpleasant stuff, I've stepped off the bike pretty much bone dry, including my boots. They've done a great job of down low on the bike, and it's just been a little bit of dampness on my shoulders. So exactly what you want from a touring motorcycle like this. I will say as well, I did think these little side deflector things might be a bit of a gimmick, but they're actually really effective and also play into that really comprehensive package of wind and weather protection. Down, they leave a little bit of wind sort of kissing the outside of your knees and thighs, but if you put it up, it does a slightly better job of pushing that air maybe an inch or two wider, and it just means that you don't feel any chill at all on your legs, and also you get a bit of warmth maybe from the engine or the radiator there, and so it really does leave you nice and snug. And it is maybe just a little thing, but if you're doing a really long day on the bike, over time those little discomforts can really add up. And so yeah, for the sort of money you're paying for this bike, maybe you'd expect it to be excellent, but it really is. As for the riding position as well, I'd say it's another strength of this bike. Perhaps it's slightly more sporty than the 1250 RT, but it's still very, very comfortable with this nice neutral bar position, a really luxuriously soft seat, I'd say, and an 820mm seat height that feels totally manageable. It's a big bike at about 280 kilograms fully fueled up. But for me, even with relatively short legs, I can flat foot it, and it feels super comfortable, and like there's plenty of leg room out on the road. So the way they've just got the ergonomics dialed in, for me, is really nice. It's a perfect balance really of being engaging to ride, but when you're sat up on the motorway with the screen up, I could do it for hours on end. Next up, heated bits. BMW do a fantastic job of almost taking it too far and making them too hot, with 3 levels of adjustability on the grips and 3 levels on the seat. It's been about 10 degrees-ish for most of the time that I've had this bike, and I've been going between 1 and 2 really, whereas 3 is It's unpleasant. I can probably stand it for about 5 minutes before it feels like it's cooking my backside. But that's kind of what you want. You want to know that there's always more in case you do encounter a particularly cold day. I've also got to say the heated bit setup for the passenger is probably the best I've seen on a bike, because not only do you get a heated seat with its own dedicated control, but also heated grab rails, which feels like a nice bit of equality between the rider and passenger, where the passenger normally misses out and gets cold hands. Now, of course, a big part of a good touring bike is plenty of luggage capacity. I also really enjoy it for press bikes because it means not having to put a backpack on with all my camera stuff. And this bike's brilliant, I will say, in terms of the quality and versatility of the luggage that you've got. Specifically, I like these Vario side cases. They've got a little winder look, Tim. How good is that? So if you don't need all the luggage capacity, you can wind them in, and that means better aerodynamics, I guess, and also slightly narrower bike for stuff like putting it in the garage or filtering. But yeah, if you do want the extra capacity, wind them out, and they get quite significantly bigger there. And so I'd say that's quite a cool little feature that you don't see on many other bikes, if any, apart from the BMWs. I think you can get those for the GS as well. Also, not only does this massive top box make for a great backrest for the passenger, it's very nicely finished off there with a pad, a big pad, but also it's nicer than my lounge in here, Tim. It's got a carpet, it's really big, you can probably get 2 full face lids in, and also it's got a bit of a soft closing as well with those little gas shock things, and it's also got a little USB-C socket in there, which has bailed me out a couple of times over the past 2 weeks with things like my phone or Cardo or cameras and stuff like that. There's a little neck compartment there which I think would be perfect for putting a USB-C cable in, just in case you get caught out with one of your gadgets. And central lock-in. I know keyless is a bit divisive. Not everyone loves the idea of keyless ignition, but if you do have a touring bike like this where the steering lock, the filler cap, the luggage is all tied into it, then personally I'm quite a big fan. It feels really convenient and makes the bike feel easy to use. So yeah, really comfortable bike. But what I will say as well is, despite its presence, let's say, it can actually get a fair lick on, and that's partly owing to the fact that it's got this brilliant 1300 shift cam boxer twin. Now, I've tried it out in plenty of other bikes, the RS, the R recently, the GS Adventure, but I think this bike is where it's most at home, and I think that's for a few reasons. Number one, it's got the speed that you need with this new 1300 version, with the extra power at the top, for making those quick overtakes when you are 2 up or you've got the luggage full and you need a bit of pace just to make a safe pass. That more aggressive cam profile when you give it the beans on the shift cam, plus the extra capacity now at 1300, plus the slightly more over square dimensions that make it happier to rev, all combined for a bike that does feel like it's got enough punch at the top to get past, a couple of lorries quickly, for example. And so it's not just a matter of entertainment to have a fast bike, but also sometimes with something like this, I feel like it makes it feel safer as well. Then I'd say it's very smooth too. Sometimes I think the Boxer Twin perhaps lacks a bit of personality versus some of the competition when it comes to like an adventure bike, for example. A GS doesn't feel quite as exciting maybe in the engine as a Ducati Multistrada V4 or even the T-Plane 1200 in the Triumph Tiger. But in this particular application, where motorway miles are a big part of what the bike's about, I think I'd forego any entertaining growl, let's say, from the engine in favour of something that's buttery smooth, and it really is. It purrs along at speed, even when it's revving up a little bit. And so, yeah, those little vibes can become quite irritating on the motorway, both through the bars and pegs, but I don't really get any of that with this bike. It's just quick and effortless. The other side of shift cam, of course, is the kind of less aggressive cam profile in the lower revs, and that should give you better torque down low, but also better fuel economy. And I will say I do find that to be another strength of this bike, with it being fairly large, fairly heavy in terms of the broader motorcycle market. You might expect fuel economy from a big 1.3 litre engine to be a bit on the poor side, but it's a massive strength of this bike. And I will say, even in the real world, if you stick to 60 or 70, which can be difficult because speed feels effortless on this thing, but if you can show some restraint, then I think 65 miles per gallon feels quite easy to achieve on the motorway, and if you were being a touch more intentional about kind of hypermiling it, you maybe could get a little bit more. So with 24 litres of fuel on board, which I think is fairly healthy as well, realistically the range that's achievable on this bike should be enough for like 99% of people, and for anyone who wants a bit more, you're probably going to have to look at the GSA with its 30-litre tank. Now, BMW don't hold back with their press bikes. They fit them out with all sorts of accessories and extra equipment, and I'll get onto the price later, which you might imagine is in the less good stuff about this bike. But one thing that I've been really glad of is the rider assistance package, which gets you the front and rear radars, active cruise control. You know, it's one of the best systems, BMWs. I think they do a great job of it. And on a touring bike like this, it just really takes a bit of fatigue out of those long motorway stints. So yeah, I've definitely found that very valuable indeed. If you're following traffic through a average speed check, or when it gets busy and the speed of the traffic starts to oscillate, you know, it's a great tool. And this front radar also gives you front collision warnings, which I think are useful as well. I did say in my review of the R1300R, perhaps they were a bit invasive. Sometimes when you were doing momentum overtakes, it would jab the brakes a bit, or if you were also filtering, I found it a little bit twitchy. But maybe the slightly different riding style on this bike, where you're perhaps not riding quite so assertively or aggressively, means you get fewer of those, they're not false reads, but those less desirable behaviors from the front collision warning system. And the only times it does kick in is maybe when you're getting a little bit too close, and it's nice to have that little angel on your shoulder saying, you know, just take it a bit easy here. Say the same as well for the blind spot warnings. It's great to have that little light in the mirrors just to tell you that there's someone sitting just behind you. I'd take that any day over not having it. And so yeah, if I was saving the pennies for a new R1300RT, this package would be high on my list of things to accommodate within my budget. Now, even mechanically, I would say that the suspension setup of an RT and a GS is already pretty good in terms of comfort and also how planted and reassuring it makes the bike feel. If you're not familiar, well, you've got the monoshock at the rear, of course, but also it's a telelever front end which uses a monoshock as well. And for me, it just gives you this great ride quality, like I say, but also some good mechanical behaviors too, like the fact that it sort of resists a little bit of dive on the brakes. But this now, well, it's got the dynamic ESA, their electronic semi-active system, and also now their variable spring rates at both ends, which gives it a greater range of adjustability. And so this could well be one of the most advanced suspension setups on the entire market, and I will say it absolutely pays dividends. The best thing you can possibly say about a good suspension package, a semi-active one, is that you don't notice any problems ever, because it's meant to constantly adjust in real time to the road conditions, the riding conditions, your speed and all that sort of thing, to give you the best possible damping and I guess spring rate as well for this bike in real time. So no excessive dive on the brakes, no wallowing into corners, but also not too harsh, and you shouldn't feel those vibes in the road. It should feel comfortable at the same time as well, especially when you're cruising along. That is exactly what I got from this bike. It rarely feels uncomfortable. It's one of the most beautiful, cushy rides that I've had. Obviously, it's got a bit of weight to it as well, which gives it some plushness maybe. But then also when you chuck it into a corner and ride it a bit harder, it doesn't complain either. It's a bike that can truly do everything, and it sort of makes you appreciate why, you know, they're quite widely used by police forces, because it's just this super comfortable package, but also has this agility as well. I do think there's a slightly different way of riding this bike though. It wants to kind of fall into a corner, so you kind of hold the bars to make sure it doesn't tip in further, and also maybe more counter lean than hanging off at the majority of speeds. It's only when you're really going quite quick that I feel confident, you know, leaning off the bike. But once you get used to the way of riding it and just tipping it in and then holding it there, I've been so impressed by how nimble it feels and how tight you can get it to turn. I did a bit of playing around on the car park last week outside the office, and U-turns and things like that. Once you get confident with it, a doddle really for a bike of 280 kilograms. I think the other thing as well that I have to mention is this new almost variable geometry, where When you put it in the dynamic mode, which is more throttle response, a bit more sporty feeling, it gives it a bit more length on the shock at the rear, and that sits the bike up and steepens the steering angle at the front and gives you that more twitchy, agile feel to it that maybe is going to make for a bit more fun on, you know, those quicker rides. I think that's just such a brilliant feature, and another thing that can help to make it feel fairly agile for a big bike. And it really does feel different between those two modes. In fact, when I first got this bike out on the motorway, I was thinking this feels a little bit more sporty than I'd like. I want it to feel a bit more reassuring. And lo and behold, the last person who'd ridden it had left it in dynamic. So I put it into road, it sits down a bit at the back and feels more appropriate for motorway riding. It's a fantastic feature that gives you something, again, exceptionally versatile, which is everything that a tourer should be. And in fact, it almost makes it feel like it's fringing upon being a sports tourer. Lastly, a big bike needs really good brakes, and this does have exceptionally good brakes. It's got a linked braking system, so each lever will give you a bit of each brakes. I think some people maybe would prefer not to have a system like that, or think they would prefer to have the individual control over the two brakes. But what I will say is this bike stops really very nicely, and combined with the composure that the suspension gives it, it just gives you such confidence that even if someone does something erratic on the motorway in front of you, or you're coming into a roundabout and the lights change quickly, or someone moves into your lane, just give it either brake or a bit of both if you want, and it just stops quickly and reassuringly. And so that's definitely another point that I've really enjoyed about this bike. But like I say, it's not perfect, so let's have a little word about some of the stuff that I'd like to see, you know, just tweaked and improved. Number one, you know, they've made it more sporty, and so it does feel a little bit fidgety on the motorway, even in that road mode, and that took me a little bit of getting used to. It's a big bike in terms of surface area as well, and so that does mean that turbulence off other vehicles and, you know, those gusts that you get coming off the side of trucks, there's a big amount of bodywork to catch with all the luggage on as well, and so it does mean it moves around a little bit. I think as well with an adventure bike, if you've got a bigger front wheel and it just feels more like that kind of stable feel, maybe you get used to riding that style of bike over distance on the motorway. Now I will say it never wobbles or kicks around so much that it feels dangerous, and so like I say, you've just got to get used to it moving around a little bit beneath you. And once you've accepted that that's how the bike likes to behave on the motorway, then you can relax into it, and actually it is very, you know, enjoyable to ride on the motorway. But yeah, it just took a little bit of adjustment. Like I say, maybe the K1600, the Goldwing are similar in terms of surface area, like I say, but just that bit heavier, that bit longer, and so they can kind of take it. But this is somewhere in between, and so not a deal breaker for me, but just took me by surprise a little bit. Now this model is fitted with their ASA, or automated shift assistance, so it's not a manual bike. It's got the ability to run as an automatic because it's got two electronic actuators, one on the clutch, one on the gearbox, and so you can stick it in auto mode and it will do everything on your behalf in that regard. It's just twist and go effectively. I've been riding it exclusively, though, I will say, in the manual mode, where you do still have a foot shifter, but it's just like an electronic switch that sort of sends a message to the actuators to tell it what to do, just because I find it better to choose my own gears, whereas the auto mode, like all automatic bikes I've found so far, occasionally gets it wrong, and then that's kind of annoying. I will say the twist and go nature, it is kind of convenient. It suits this bike nicely. The shifts are really crisp and quite addictive as well, both up and down the box. But the one time I found it a little, I would say almost scary, is when you're doing those tight turns. And like I said, the bike wants to kind of tip into the corner, and it has quite a lot of mass to it. And sometimes I just wish I had a bit of clutch to have that fine control. If you let the clutch out nice and smooth, that forward drive just picks the bike up when you're going through a corner and makes you feel like it's not going to flop over on you. You can do it with the throttle, of course, but there's a lag. It doesn't quite have that immediacy and fine control that you get with a clutch. And so 99% of the time, I've actually enjoyed the ASA on this bike. In fact, it's one of my favorite auto bikes I've ridden. But just in those moments where you have that heart in your mouth kind of situation, where you just think the bike's about to go over, you give it a little bit of gas, it doesn't quite kick in immediately, you know, I'd have probably rather have had a clutch. And so I think for me, I'd go for this bike in manual, but I guess you can spec it with a quick shifter to give you those clutchless shifts as well. Number 3 of things I would like to see improved is backlit switchgear. Come on, guys. I don't understand. It's not like active cruise control where it's like complicated. Just put some lights inside these bits, because at night there's so many buttons, and actually some of them feel, in terms of like through your gloves as well, they feel quite similar. Like the menu switch and the rocker switch here are practically the same. And on a dark motorway, you literally cannot see a thing, but also you don't want to be looking down and trying to get the right button. You want to be looking ahead, especially on the motorway in the dark. So that is something I'd massively like to see improved. They've done a good job otherwise of laying it out. This rocker switch allows you to assign, you know, a given setting like cruise control distance, heated grips. You can put the windscreen on that. So that's nice and convenient. You've also got these 4 quick access buttons as well, so there's even more versatility to get to the features that you specifically need. But it's, you know, it's all well and good in the day, but at night, if you can't see them, then it's still quite difficult to get on with. Number 4, the radio. It's got a radio built in. You can pay for this. I just found I couldn't get a DAB signal, Tim. I was trying to get Planet Rock, Capital Dance. Yeah. I was going eclectic. I thought, is it the genre? So I was like, what else did I try? I tried everything basically, and there was just a lot of times when it wouldn't get DAB, and then if you go on FM, it's like, I mean, it feels very old school to have FM interference. So I like the idea of it, but in practicality, like, I never really got a signal. It's too annoying for the to put it on a given DAB station. It can't find a signal, and then about 20 minutes later, Planet Rock catches a signal and AC/DC comes on at full setting, and I'll say it makes you jump. Bloody hell.
It's too early for that stuff now.
Imagine that when it just comes on. So yeah, stick with the Cardo and Spotify, I think. But number 5 on this particular bike, in terms of things that, well, I don't know if it could be improved, but it's just the price. The from price, Tim, is £18,900, which that's a lot, you know, for a bike. It's a lot of bike, but it's still a substantial fee. But this one is spec'd up with all the good stuff. Can you have a guess at what it might be in total on the configurator?
You've already said one thing on it was about £1,000, so I'm going to say 25.
I've got the figure here for you. It is £29,305. Because it's got the option 719 finish, the ASA, the rider assistance, the SOS button, the option 719 bits and bobs, the radio. I mean, it's got the works, and it is probably the price you pay for something that is this good. But is it twice as good, for example, as like a Honda NT1100? I think they're about 12 or 13 grand. So I don't know. From a utilitarian perspective, I think it's hard to justify. From a luxury perspective, if you just don't really care about the price and you want something that feels special and extremely capable and all that sort of stuff, then maybe you can justify it. But it's a lot of money. So that, my friends, rounds off the good and bad of the BMW R1300RT. I'd love to know what you think of it down in the comments below. And would you pay 29 grand for such an accomplished touring motorcycle? Personally, I can't think of many bikes that I'd rather do a week away on than this. Maybe a Goldwing, but this has the advantage of being that little bit lighter and a bit more sporty, so it gives you a bit of everything. But yeah, like I say, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I will put some of my other 1300 reviews on the screen as well, in case you fancy checking those out. We've got the R, the RS, the GS, the GSA, so I'll put them in a playlist, put that on the screen. Do hit subscribe for more of the latest motorcycle news and reviews like this right here on MOTOBOB. A massive thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.